So, welcome everybody to TDI's first podcast of 2023. Delighted today to introduce you to our three-star advisory board, and each of our three stars will give a quick update on their thoughts and their aspirations as we go into the new year. So I'm going to kick off and ask Adrian Baguley from D&S to start, and then we'll follow up with Charlie Forte, the Mod CIO, and finally we'll allow Lieutenant General Richard Wardlaw, CDLS, to conclude the podcast. So Adrian, over to you, please.
Thanks very much, Phil. So in looking forward about what our priorities are, I think it's really important to look back on last year and the significant event that happened on the 24th of February last year, which has very much shaped what a lot of activities happened over the last year, both the material support to Ukraine in that land warfare in Europe, and that's really shaping a lot of our thinking, both in terms of Europe and more widely around the challenges that defence faces, both in terms of delivering operational effect, but also the resilience of our capabilities. So I think just looking back is really important to understand why we are where we are moving forwards. And if I look about the three macro level outcomes that's drawing us to focus on, one is around increasing our operational output, both in terms of availability and readiness, but also in terms of the resilience of our operational output. That's an acute focus, having come out of the pandemic where resilience was quite a focus. We've now gone into a major military operation which is really shining a light on resilience. So that's the first thing I would say. The other thing I would say is very much how do we insert capability in a pace that is within our adversaries' OODA loop, so that our military effect has military advantage on the battlefield. That's the second big thing, and you can see some of that happening today in the various phases of the Ukraine conflict. And then the third thing, and again, this was a big theme in the integrated review, but it has been really reinforced with what we're seeing in that conflict in Ukraine, is the integrated effect of defence is really a critical battle-winning advantage. So, those three things I think are colouring our thinking around the integrated review refresh, very much looking at the context shift that has happened last year, which is causing us to take pause and make sure that the IR is tweaked so that we're focusing on the right things going forwards.
Thank you, Adrian. And Charlie, any thoughts from sort of CIO world for the year ahead?
Yeah, thank you, Phil, and thanks also for the opportunity to get the three of us to chat through this important set of topics. Look, I mean, building on what Adrian has said, clearly, in a world that was already moving fast and giving us significant discontinuities that we had to deal with, clearly the last 12 months have really underlined and accelerated that in really significant and important ways. And that means that the way we need to respond, albeit on themes that we were already working, really needs to take an inflection up in terms of intensity. For me, the two key important themes that underpin that, again, are things that we've already been working, certainly in a digital context within the UK defence community, is about cohesion and integration. So cohesion is about how we work together, how we connect and get out of our individual silos. That isn't just about those silos as they have occurred inside defence, and God knows they're there, although we've made huge progress. It is also about how we work together as a wider community to deal with the delivery of capability and effect that we need to deliver for the frontline defence community. Integration is then about the actual products and services that show up being able by default to be more integrable and interoperable, to allow data and information to be much more easily used in real time, which is a big shift from where we've been. So I think those two themes will continue to be really important as we go forward. I think the other thing that I might add in service of all of that is as we think through the IR response, one of our aims, and I think some success in the last 12 months in moving our emerging digital strategy, which I think has moved us a long way, the functional digital strategy, building the horizontal integrator through digital inside defence. We are working now to move that up a level so that digital, given that it underpins almost everything that we do, it is now expressed as defence level strategy outputs. And without going into all the detail here, unless you want to come back and talk a bit more about it, we can certainly do that if you want. We've got 3 big output areas that we want to focus that effort on. We will express those outcomes at defence level as defence level outcomes, and the digital function will continue to work in service of enabling and delivering all of that. And I think that's a major and important shift forward that I think we're on the cusp of making. My last point is then, and again builds on some of the things that Adrian has said. So what do we need to do in service of that, and what's keeping me awake at night? Like many of you, skills and culture is both an opportunity for us, but also a big challenge in being able to enable all of this. So we've got to keep working that. I do think that there is a major investment that, on top of what we've already been doing, that we need to make in terms of digital skills across the whole landscape. I do actually personally strongly believe that we can make a significant link to UK prosperity if we invest properly in that and helping build what is a skill shortage for everyone. And then my second bigger issue in risk, and Adrian touched on it, is resilience. I'll focus on digital resilience. I think we really do have to double down. Again, good work and good progress that we've made on that, but we really need to work hard at that over the next 12 months. And I will pause there.
Thank you very much, Charlie. Good recap. Richard, thoughts from CDLS's Empire?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, building on both Charlie and Adrian, but taking Adrian's earlier sort of head marks that I think is falling out of the experience the last 12 months, this sense that there is a new premium, a very significant premium placed on availability and readiness, a pan defence. This notion that we've got to be more agile in the way we introduce capabilities to be inside the adversary's OODA loop, and this notion that integration is battle winning. I mean, it all chimes, I think, with where we are as a function trying to take support. And, it's striking in a sense that whilst the defence support strategy was published now some 2.5 years ago, at its core, it was promoting this notion that we wanted a step change in availability and greater resilience in the supply chain that serves defence. So it was prescient in that regard, but what we must ensure, much like Charlie has made the point, is that we now double down, because that imperative is one that has manifestly been proven to be the case through the experiences of Ukraine. And so in that context, the work that we initiated and developed with industry really at the end of 21 and signed off early last year at the support conference around the priority actions that we must get after with industry. Colleagues will recall that we sort of signed off 6 priority actions, but they were mapped against an ambition for availability and readiness. They were mapped against ambitions for support resilience, capability and resilience, particularly leveraging in a way that we've not done before the exercises that we run in defence to integrate industry in such a way that we we start to train together as we will expect to fight together. And that's pretty novel and new, but I think is critical if we're to fully understand the capabilities that all parties bring to operational effect. And then we also committed to work on areas such as environmental sustainability. The publication of my sustainable sport strategy last year, at the end of last year, is the vehicle through which we want to get after some of those changes. And of course, in most instances, those initiatives that we are now getting after through a environmental sustainability lens are absolutely central to longer term resilience, so that they are natural bedfellows. And finally, I think also picking up on Charlie's point about concerns and risks, the joint work we're doing on the workforce that we need to be fit for a data-led support future is critical. But I think if I was to sort of orientate colleagues as we look forward, that those efforts remain ongoing and are critical. But as I look forward for support, I would characterise my priorities in the year ahead as centering on really sort of 4 programmatic ambitions. First is, and absolutely central, is the sort of digitization of support that is the business modernization for support program. We're on the cusp now of really going from where we've been over the last 24 months of the sort of concept and assessment phase to now going into the hard yards of delivery. And I'm very excited by the opportunities that will start to present in support of Charlie Forte's area. It will really bring to life the opportunities that defence wants to achieve through the digitization of defence. Second is implementing the supply chain strategy that we shared with industry in November, and I think colleagues will recognise that does offer this significant, if not generational, opportunity to reset the value we place on resilience in the way we procure through our supply chain. And balance, away from perhaps what has been an unhealthy focus on just cost. So the acid test in the next 12 months will be the extent to which we can implement the measures required to really operationalise that intent. Thirdly, the work that we've been doing in the last 6 months on increasing defence outputs, looking at how we raise the bar across a range of platforms in terms of the availability we get for the pounds invested, has been really quite totemic, and it speaks volumes to what you can achieve when you collaborate across defence in looking at individual platforms. Implementing the outcomes of that work over the next 12 months as a programme of work, I think, is going to be a really fundamental part of what we do. And finally, we are doing work in defence support, but in support of the rest of defence, to both develop a defence operational energy strategy that will allow us to understand how to steer a course through what's going to be a very complex transition away from fossil fuels to a range of new energy solutions through to 2050. And linked to that, establishing the Operational Energy Authority that will provide the organisational construct to help steer that journey is certainly a priority I see as important. And if we've learned anything from Ukraine, it is that our acute dependency on fossil fuels is one that it does create some significant risk surface for us as an enterprise.
Thank you very much for that, Richard. Thank you, guys. That's a really good outline for the year ahead. I guess from the industrial base, one of the factors that they'll be looking at is the flow of money, I guess, from government to industry. And I guess if I come back to you, Adrian, at D&S, do we think we're going to suffer from financial pressures? We had sort of a moment of joy almost when we got to last summer, and there were huge increases in defence spending promises. They seem to have frittered away somewhat now. So I guess, are we going to be under the usual financial pressure? Adrian, what do you think?
So, what's the political answer for this one? The simple facts of the matter are the economy, the balance of the economy and the balance of public spending are really large in the papers every day. So I'm not going to say that the Chancellor's about to open the Treasury's coffers and splash money around, given that he's clearly got a very significant focus on making sure that the economy is in a stable position, so that the country can be resilient moving forward. So we'll see over the course of the next few months how that discussion plays out with regards to defence. But the Prime Minister and the Chancellor have made it very clear that defence is a national priority, and the context of what's happening in Europe at the moment and Ukraine at the moment. You've seen the Prime Minister already out with Zelensky, so I don't. These are tough times economically, and I often say that I'm glad I haven't got the wicked problem of having to balance taxation and public expenditure and the economic effects, because that is true wicked problem sport. That said, defence still gets a heck of a lot of taxpayers' money, and we shouldn't underestimate just how much of our taxpayers' money goes into the defence of the nation. The interesting thing is, as we've seen, is what that investment essentially buys is an insurance policy, because if you get into a major conflict, then the amount of gross domestic product that then goes into the defence of the nation multiplies several fold. So it's really important that the defence resources are sufficient to provide that deterrent effect, because otherwise you do end up spending an awful lot of your gross domestic product in a major conflict. So that's the balance that the Chancellor and the Prime Minister and the Cabinet will have moving forwards.
Thanks, Adrian. Good political answer that, I thought. Excellent. Charlie, any thoughts from you? Defence digital secure?
Yeah, so I was just going to add to what Adrian said about resources. And of course, none of us are going to turn away more resources, but more resources on their own might not necessarily get us to where we need to get to. And I think I'm an optimist. I think some of the things that we are in the process of getting on board and learning as an organisation, I think are important in how we apply those resources. And it is about key lessons learned from what's going on in the world around about us. And that is about thinking culturally in a very different way about outcomes on shorter timeframes and incremental delivery, sitting on top of that need for integration and working across silos. So the lesson learned from the world is about how do we think not in just 10-year cycles and outcomes that are only 5 years away, but actually getting people to work in a way that genuinely delivers benefit and outcomes that deliver against integration, using, and some of our lessons learned from what's going on in the world are about exquisite bits of materiel that can be integrated, linked, and made much more effective in frontline military outcome terms, actually by some innovation and the addition of some commodity IT by some clever people, and keeping doing that and doing that fast. Now, we haven't got that yet in place. That's clearly a lesson learned that we need to get. But like I said, I'm an optimist. I do think that we are beginning to get after that. And certainly that is, I think, one of the key things that will allow us to be more effective. More money is great, and those two allied together give us a much better set of outcomes. Money on its own might not get us to where we need to get to. Thank you,
Charlie. Richard, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to observe that, if Ukraine has taught us anything, that austerity is often the seedbed of innovation. And, we need to that's kind of one of the macro lessons we need to take away inside UK defence, that, I think whilst Charlie is absolutely right, more money is always helpful. Actually, whatever settlement we emerge with in the months ahead, I think the evidence of the last year points to the fact that we can do more with what we've got, and that does play to Adrian's earlier point that there's got to be a very significant focus in the months ahead on increasing outputs of the kit that we have, and there's some really good green shoots showing in that regard. I mean, the work we did, for example, with D&S and with Air Command before Christmas, it was a 12-month effort on F-35. We've effectively landed a route through to a 20% uplift in the availability of that platform, and in the process avoided spending some £400 million. So, these are really great examples of what you can do if you apply yourself, if you work collaboratively across defence. And I would say that what we're trying to do with the Increasing Defence Output Study in the year ahead is absolutely more of the same.
Thank you, Richard.
Bill,
Thank you for that.
if I say something that might be slightly controversial, but actually the limiting factor at the moment for me is not money, it's skills. And I think that we could pour a lot of money into our enterprises, but actually the limiting factor on the rate of progress, both within government and across the industrial base, is skills. So I think just to make sure that we've got the focus on the right things, I think that's really important.
I think you're right, and we have this argument about MOD struggles to recruit people with the right digital skills, and we can talk about salary levels. And then if I talk to our industrial partners, they will say, "But we want those very same digital skills, and we have to compete with the banks, the insurance companies." So there's a level of pay differential there that they struggle with in the way that mod does when it competes with industry. So it's a common problem, and maybe that's something that we need to get around the table between modern industry. And like, if we're recruiting people, in a way, it doesn't really matter so much if said individual goes to work for mod directly or goes to work for a defence company. It's still filling into that sort of space. And I guess part of that, Adrian, I was going to ask a question if you could just expand a little bit about the whole digital engineering piece that D&S is sort of moving towards. I know we'll cover it probably at the conference next week, but just a few words on what digital engineering means to D&S at the moment.
Yeah, sure. So, and I'll give you a little bit of a trail of some of the things I'll say next week. So, my grey hair tells you that I've been in defence for 38 years, and I think this is, in my career, the biggest opportunity to transform, and transform is a terribly overused word in defence. We trot it out every couple of years, but generally to transform the way we deliver capability across the life cycle, whether it's how we develop capability, how we cure it, how we test it, how we support it, how we integrate it. So for me, digital engineering is my double down as to, I think it's the most fundamental thing that between the government and the industrial base, if we can harness that, the potential it offers us to deliver all of those outcomes that I started at the beginning, increased operational output, better integrated effect, better and more rapid capability insertion. Digital engineering almost is the foundation that could allow us to do all of those things. It's one of the tools, but it's a fundamental tool to all of those things. So that's why I'm so passionate about it. That's why this year I've dedicated the whole of this year's conference to it, because for me, if we can harness that, it will be a massive enabler for those outcomes that we need to achieve.
Fantastic. And I guess, Charlie, part of that is the support that the CIO's office has to give to enable that digital work, whether it's the digital backbone or other elements of your world.
No, I think that's important, and I think we're reasonably well placed to be able to do that. We had, interestingly, a conversation earlier this morning with this group about this topic, and recognised that the most significant thing we need to focus on in order to make the digital engineering opportunities work are about our collective working practices, how we work together, and then solving some real, not just the softer skills of collaboration and doing that, but actually some quite hard-edged practical things around what data gets collaborated and shared on in the digital twinned world. Because, of course, the value comes the more you aggregate, then the more value you're going to get. So, and I don't think we've only scratched the surface on how we do that collectively in a way that actually gets after delivering some of the outcomes that we talked about earlier. And I think that's going to be an important area of priority for us.
Absolutely. Gentlemen, thank you for that. Richard, do you want to sort of any sort of concluding thoughts before we sign off and wish everybody well for 2023?
Only to add to that final piece on digital engineering, I think Adrian made the point that this is about looking at it through the, if you like, the end-to-end life cycle. And I think if you look at the way digital engineering is going in the private sector, there has been a degree of success in adopting that practice, I think, both in the manufacturing and in the design of products. What there is less evidence, I would suggest, of is the extent to which the same digital engineering philosophy and insights play through into through-life support. And there is no doubt in my mind that there is a manifest opportunity in the use of digital twins in the through life support space to create that sort of virtuous loop back into production, back into design, to ensure that we really do land this idea that we are improving capability iteratively through life. If I can get us away from this notion of midlife upgrades, I think we've succeeded. And of course, I think this idea of software intensive or software led capability is where we are going, and that opens the door on that opportunity. It doesn't mean to say there won't be midlife hardware upgrades, but the reality is that capability will become much more led by the digital capabilities that we procure going forward.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, gentlemen, for your time this morning. For those in TDI land, if the topics we've covered today have raised any questions, then please fire them into to Philippa or myself, and we will get them into the outer offices for some answers. So just leaves me to say thank you very much, gentlemen. Enjoy the rest of the year, and of course I look forward to seeing you, Adrian and Richard, at the conference next week. Take care. Thank you all indeed. Thank you.